All right, it's Wednesday night. Time for another Panther-Lair show as we get started here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Talk a little Pitt sports. First time we've done one of these post-game shows midweek show after a loss. But, first time for everything. Certainly we've got a lot to talk about tonight after the SMU game on Saturday. This Virginia game coming up this coming Saturday, the start of the basketball season, and just everything else generally going on in the world of Pitt sports. It's always fun to get together and do these live streams here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Of course, I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. The website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to talk to other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are hanging out, talking about Pitt sports at Panther-Lair.com. We have the content and the coverage, and you guys get in on the conversation in the community. We always ask you to like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That's the place we have all of our Pitt video content. The morning Pitt videos every day of the week, Monday through Friday. These live streams right here like this, Wednesday nights at 8:30 p.m. We have our post-game shows after the football games. We'll be live after the Virginia game on Saturday night. That'll be a very late post-game show, but we'll do it. I don't know how long we'll go because those nights really kill me, man. That's hard. After the Syracuse game, I was pretty knocked out, but I guess I'm just getting old, so we'll have to manage our time a little bit better, but we'll be live and it'll be fun. The post-game shows are always a good time. We drink, we talk about Pitt sports, and what more could you possibly ask for? So make sure you tune in for that right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And we'll be joined here actually right now. We'll bring him in. Good friend Jim Hammett from Panther-Lair.com joins us. I forgot to do the layout the way I like it. There we are. Jim, how are you this evening?
I'm good, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm good. I just realized that, I was talking about the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, and I realized that I forgot to do the player rankings this week. Every Monday I've been doing like a top 5 player ranking, and I didn't do one this week. And I don't know if I guess it's probably because of the loss, right? It's a lot more fun to do a top 5 player ranking, when they're winning. But I think it also occurred to me, like, I don't really know how I would so my ranking last week, I think was Kyle Lewis 1, Rasheem Biles 2, Desmond Reed 3, Ben Sauls 4, Eli Holstein 5. But I don't know. I don't really know how I would change that because oh man, Eli Holstein, got to drop him out. Well, yeah, but it's not like anybody else had a good game. Am I going to move Jake Overman into the top 5 because he's one of the few guys who had a good game at SMU? I mean, if I ask you right now, who was Pitt's, I don't want to say who was Pitt's best player, but what Pitt player had the best game at SMU? What would you say?
I don't know. I was thinking about that during the game, and the only 2 people that came to mind that I thought played fairly well were Jake Overman and Kenny Johnson. Those were the only 2 guys where I'm wow, they played really well. At the end of the day, Kyle Lewis still had 8 tackles and a sack, and still kind of put up his numbers, but you can't really say anyone on the defense played well whenever you give up so many touchdowns. Tyreek Robinson, I guess he was pretty good.
Yeah, Malachi Thomas,
freshman All-American.
Yeah, a couple. Look, I wouldn't say he looked bad. What did he finish? 2 catches for 22 yards and a touchdown. He made some plays. I'm sort of surprised they had 8 tackles for loss in that game. Does that number seem weird to you?
I mean, yes and no. Rashard Smith obviously got his yards, but there were times wherever, a lot of his rushing yards came off that 72-yard run or whatever it was. So, there were times where Pitt's run defense was working well. It just, I don't know, it kind of felt fruitless whenever you're down by so many points. But I thought they stopped them at the line of scrimmage or behind it a few times. So
yeah, I guess that's true too. It all just sort of melts into oblivion, when it gets that far out of hand. And it's funny because obviously you were down there. I was watching the game from here in Pittsburgh, and the first play, Nate Matlack breaks up a pass, and I'm like, all right, it's on. Here we go. They're ready to play. This is They are ready to play. They're going to make plays. Nate Matlack's out there doing things. And then like the very next play is what they get out of that 43, 53 yards, something like that.
Yeah.
On Rashad Battle, just not tackling him. Oh, we asked Archie Collins today what was up with Battle. Like what he didn't play after that snap. I mean, he played 2 snaps, did not come back in the game. And Collins said that Battle had been banged up going into the game. So apparently he got more banged up, in that one. So I thought that was interesting. I sort of assumed it was punitive to not have, but then again, he's not the only guy on the team who failed to tackle a ball carrier all the way to the ground. So you can't bench everyone, right? You can't. But that was that was a rough one. So, oh yeah, the original topic of the top 5 players in the team. I don't really like. I should put the ranking out there just to get the weekly conversation about it, but I don't know. Like I forget if you agreed with my top 5 last week. If you did, would you change anything about it, or what would be your top 5 this week?
I don't think I could change much. Like there's nothing. Like maybe someone deserves to be dropped out, but I don't know who deserves to like jump back in. So I'd probably I'm with you. I kind of keep it the same, and I don't know if the poor play continues this week, then maybe we can adjust that top 5.
Well, that's the hardest part, like you said. I mean, like, so if you want to say, oh, Holstein isn't playing well, okay, you take him out, but for who? Like, I don't really know who, like, the obvious, I guess Kenate Mumfield or Kenny Johnson just as a lifetime achievement award. Kenny Johnson. So, Kenny Johnson had 8 catches for 81 yards in that game. Like, it's borderline criminal, his usage this year. Just looking at the numbers, he's 27th in the ACC in targets. Do you think Kenny Johnson's the 27th best wide receiver in the ACC, Jim?
I don't. And I mean, I just think all the offensive numbers are just skewed because of the past 3 weeks. Like everyone was on a good pace. Then all of a sudden it just kind of went to a screeching halt. That Cal game, like what did Eli have? Like 114 passing. It's just like the entire passing game kind of went defunct. I mean, even Mumfield was on pace to have this really, really good season, and even he slowed down a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, I think he was being used correctly those first couple weeks. I think Cincinnati shut him out, but the other games he was playing well. Kenny, that is.
Yeah.
But I just think it's kind of more of a product of what's going on right now.
All right. So that's fair. So ignore the fact that he's 27th in the ACC and in targets. He's 4th on this team in targets. If I told you before the season Kenny Johnson's going to be 4th on the team in target, now we didn't anticipate how much Desmond Reed was going to get the ball, which is obviously a good thing to get the ball to him. I guess it's, it probably comes down to Raphael Williams, right? Williams has, according to Pro Football Focus, 43 targets this year in 8 games. Kenny Johnson has 41. So not a huge difference, but I wouldn't think it would be that close, and I wouldn't think that Johnson would be behind Williams. I mean, Johnson, I think, is their best receiver. Like, I think best overall player. I don't feel like he's gotten an opportunity to show it this season, though.
Yeah, I could get behind that. I mean, he's made some like great plays. That catch against Kent State, like early on, like first big play of the season, that was there. He had a great sideline catch against who was that? It was West Virginia early in the game too. I mean, he's shown the ability to go down, stretch the field, and last year he showed the ability that he can do some reverses and be a good return man and just get the ball in his hands. That kind of player. So yeah, I mean, I think there's probably more opportunities to get him the ball. And I don't know. I mean, like, I guess that can kind of take us into our next topic of like, what does this offense need to do differently? Like, what has gone so wrong these past 3 weeks? Like, what can they change up?
Yeah, I want to talk about that, but I want to complain about Kenny Johnson more.
Okay.
Gavin Bartholomew has caught 80% of his targets. That's the most for anybody with like a healthy amount of targets. Kenny Johnson has caught 78% of his targets, 32 catches on 41 targets. Like I said, he's got 2 targets fewer than Poppy Williams. He's got 10 more catches than Raphael Williams. He's averaging 11 yards per catch. Pro Football Focus says he's been targeted on a contested target, a contested catch target 7 times and has caught all 7 of them. According to whatever they consider to be a contested target, he's caught all 7 that's been thrown to him. Hold on, let me check another stat. I mean, his yards per route run, Well, his yards per out run is behind Desmond Reed, Konate Mumfield, and Sincere Lee. And I think part of that is because he's running a ton of routes and he's not getting as many targets as he should. I would be okay. I mean, I guess it's really just about Raphael Williams. Like, I don't have an issue with him having fewer targets than Konate Mumfield. I think Desmond Reed should get a lot of targets. I don't know if he should have more targets, more receiving targets than Kenny Johnson, because I think, in terms of touches, Reed is going to get the receiving, the receiving targets and the handoffs. But I think Johnson, I mean, certainly among the receivers, should be no lower than number 2 in targets, and probably on the team should be no lower than 2 in targets. I mean, he's a real weapon. And like you said, yeah, we'll talk about what this offense needs to do better, but it just doesn't feel like they're getting as much as they should get out of Kenny Johnson, a guy they prioritized in the offseason, who was obviously targeted by other teams in the transfer portal. They did what they had to do and to keep him here. He is one of their better players. He's not Jordan Addison, but he's pretty damn good. And I don't get it. Unless we just want to say, well, it's because they're dropping everybody into coverage and it's hard to get I mean, like, this should be one of the main guys. There should be, to me, there's 3 guys who should touch the ball the most, and it's Mumfield, Reed, and Johnson. And that's not the case right now. Like, that, it doesn't feel like there's a concerted effort to get the ball to, Desmond Reed, as there should be. Less so Mumfield and Johnson, but I think they've got to step up those efforts because these are the best players, right? You need to get the best ball. You need to get the ball to your best players, don't you?
I agree. And I mean, you kind of look at like Pitt's pass distribution right now. And I mean, like you're looking at a team that's going to have 6 guys with 30 plus catches this year, more than likely. I mean, and probably a couple guys with 50 plus. But at a certain point, I mean, it's good to have threats all over the field. It's good to have options whenever Eli's back to pass. But I'm kind of with you. It's at the same time, I kind of want to, get a little bit more to number 9 and number 2. And, have, Williams and Lee kind of as those secondary options. Right now, it's like all 4 of those guys are kind of getting equal reps, equal opportunities. And yeah, in some cases that's good, but in others, sometimes you just need your best players to be your best players.
Well, yeah. And then, I mean, in terms of like actual like playing time and snaps, I mean, there's like, again, Pro Football Focus says there's BJ Williams and Ryan Barron, Lyndon Cooper, and Eli Holstein. And number 5 in offensive snaps is Raphael Williams. Ahead of Mumfield, ahead of Bartholomew, Branson Taylor, Desmond Reed, Kenny Johnson comes in at 10th. I like Raphael Williams. I think he's been a nice player. I think he's been a bit of a revelation. He's been better than I expected him to, but I'm not sure the best players are getting emphasized here. I just, it feels like, and I think when Kenny Johnson gets the ball, he shows what he needs to be able, or what he's able to do. And I don't know, it just feels like for an offense that's sputtering, you really need to focus on those guys. In particular, it's 0, 2, and 9. On the matter of 0, on the matter of the running game, I've got my legal pad here, Jim. This is every running back rushing attempt against Syracuse, Cal, and SMU. Because I wanted to see like what's going on, like because when I asked Konate Mumfield yesterday, because it seems like, okay, so I mean, we can set the table, like what defenses they're doing in the last few games, only rushing 3 or 4 guys, dropping a lot of guys into coverage, forcing Pitt to try to pick them apart, and it's not going very well, as we can see. So I asked Konate Mumfield, what can you guys do when teams are doing that? And first thing out of his mouth was, we can run the ball better. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Let's look at that. Well, because anecdotally, like in my mind, it feels like still he'll get some decent yards because Desmond Reed had that 72-yard run, but that's going to offset it, or that's going to make the numbers look like something they're not. They're not getting the consistent success. They're not having the consistent success, getting the consistent pickups. I looked, and you might have seen, I put this on the board earlier. In those 3 games, there were 55 running back rushing attempts. 29 out of the 55 got 4 yards or more, which is like 52, 53%. I think that's not a bad percentage. Like, if more than half the time when you hand the ball to the running back, they're getting 4 yards or more. And I kind of like looking at the stat that way, because it's not just like average yards per carry. It's like, how many times are you successful at getting that many yards? And so I don't know. I feel like that sort of implies a consistency that I didn't really think was there. Like, would you have guessed that they were over 50% on getting 4 yards or more every time they give the ball to a running back in the last 3 games?
I mean, yeah, yes and no. I mean, obviously the 72-yard run against Cal definitely inflated the numbers a little bit, but I thought they were doing some good things running the ball that way. Um, I don't have a good answer for why it's not working right now. I mean, I think a lot, some of it at least stems from teams just being more aware of Desmond Reed. Like this is I think Jeff Capel always used to say this in basketball. He's like, all of a sudden, Bub Carrington went to the top of the scouting report. And that's exactly what happened to Desmond Reed. Everyone knows who he is. He's not sneaking up on anyone. I mean, I think Branson Taylor's injury affected them more probably than I realized it would. I think the left guard situation just not being settled hasn't helped things. And I don't know. I think those are all factors. So I don't know what it would take to get it more consistent. But I mean, you look at Desmond Reed's carry numbers the past couple of weeks, like he's only running the ball like 13, 14 times. If you were to read the message boards, you would make it seem like he's running the ball 25 times for 1 yard at a time. And that's not the case. Like you said, the numbers don't say that, but I don't know. Maybe just having more of a concerted effort to run the ball would make a difference.
So that's what I'm starting to come around on, is this idea that maybe they're actually not running it enough. Like Cal, the first half against Cal, they ran 26 offensive plays. 10 of them were running plays, and they got 118 yards on those 10 plays. Now, that includes a 72-yard run, right? So, okay, take that out. You're still at 46 yards on like 9 carries. It's better than 5 yards per carry. And there weren't any other, I mean, there was a 15-yard run in there, but it's 2, 4, 5, 6, 3, 8, 15, 1, 2, 6, 1 and 2. Like, they're getting decent chunks. They just only ran the ball 10 times. The second half against Cal, 30 offensive plays, 9 running back rushing attempts. First half against Syracuse, 23 plays, 9 running back rushing attempts. The second half against Syracuse, 21 plays, 6 running back rushing attempts. First half against SMU, 35 offensive plays, only 8 running back rushing attempts. And that game got a little out of hand, but each of these halves that I'm talking about, they were only averaging like 4 or 5 yards per passing attempt. So to go back to the Cal first half, like I talked about. So take the 72-yard run out of there. We know those yards count, but let's look at the other 9 carries where they got 46 yards. So they averaged more than 5 yards per carry on those plays. Passing, they attempted 13 passes in the first half against Cal and averaged 4.2 yards per attempt. So I actually think there's a possibility that they could run the ball more and get more success out of it. And maybe Konate Mumfield would be right that if they ran it a little more, teams would have to respect it. They would have to come up a little bit, bring guys more into the box, and then create those opportunities in the passing game. It's weird to come out of the Frank Cignetti years into the Cade Bell offense and say, you know what, maybe they need to run more. And Pat Narduzzi would probably tell us, Jim, that, if they were running the ball more, we would complain that they should be throwing more, that we just always find things to complain about. But I think I'm going to ask him tomorrow, like, is it possible you're not running the ball enough?
I think it's a fair theory there. I mean, because even I'm okay, if Desmond Reed gets 2 or 3 yards a carry. If he runs the ball 9 times and gets about 40 yards and it's like 2, 3, 4, 5 yards a carry, because that 10th time he can break it 50 yards. That's the thing. If you just keep setting him up, all he needs is a crack. And right now, if the offensive line is struggling, he might only get a crack. But again, that's all he needs. So if you just kind of plug away at it, get a few yards here and there, then if he breaks one, then all of a sudden they're worried about him. Then all of a sudden they're worried about him too much that the passing game's there. So I don't know if it's that simple. Maybe. I mean, there are smarter people on the job than you and me, but I don't know. Yes. I mean, there's at least logic with the last 10 minutes what we've been talking about.
Yeah, and I think you probably, I think to some extent, like the some of the passes outside, the swing passes and things like that, try to act as kind of an extension of the run game. They definitely, again, looking at Pro Football Focus numbers, they definitely seem to have more success running to the right. According to Pro Football Focus, he's had 11 carries. Well, those numbers are going to be skewed by the 72-yard run. So we'll skip that, but carries outside the tight end to the right. So, I mean, basically going outside the, not just outside the tackle, but outside the tight end to the right. He's got 16 carries, average almost 7 yards per carry out there. He's averaging 4 yards per carry running outside the right tackle. He's got a ton of yards running between the right guard and right tackle because that's where he went for the 72-yard run. But, maybe sometimes I do think they try and jam it up the middle a little bit too much with Reed. And, I think that's where you run into some of the blocking issues that they've got. And no, Pitt's offensive line's not playing great right now, but Desmond Reed can make a lot of things happen. And you know what? And Daniel Carter can too. Like, I'm kind of coming around on him a little bit. And we know what Rodney Hammond can do. And I don't want to take the ball out of Desmond Reed's hands. I think I would just like to see them run it a little bit more instead of defaulting to the pass so much. And I know it's a pass-based offense. I know that's what Cade Bell does and what he likes to do and all that. But like, I think there's got to be more there. But of course, then the other problem when you drop back to pass, and I think we saw this in the SMU game, but really all three of these is like, we talk about teams not blitzing, but they're getting pressure. And I don't know what the solution is with that. Like if they can get pressure with 4, you're kind of screwed. Like, you better be able to run, because if not, it's going to be hard to pass. I keep saying this. If they can get pressure with 4, they've now got 7 guys covering 5. You're not going to win. Those numbers are just not in your favor. And I don't know what the solution is other than just to get better at blocking. And I don't know how much better you can get. This is game 9 that we're about to see on Saturday night, right?
Yeah, and like that's just the thing. Like we just had the NFL trade deadline. There is no trade deadline. Like this is the roster. This is who they have. Yeah. Like, and I don't think there are really anyone pushing like Terrence Enos at left tackle. Like, it's his job. Like, he just kind of needs to grow into it and play a little bit better. I mean, he's a junior. He was a good recruit. Obviously, he's just been buried because Pitt's had some good tackles lately. I mean, it's been Matt Gonsalves. It's been Branson Taylor. It's, he's just kind of been that 3rd, 4th guy for a couple of years. But like, at a certain point, it's like, all right, man, like, this is your job. What are you waiting for? So, I mean, there is no other answer. I don't know what they can do differently. I mean, I think we asked them Saturday after the game. I'm like, should there like be more tight ends like blocking? Like what's going on? But like, I don't know. I don't know if there's a good solution for that other than just playing better.
And I don't like, somebody mentioned about, I think somebody asked about running like almost like a wing T formation or something like that on the board. And like, I don't know if bringing more guys into the middle of the offense is the best solution. I think probably spreading out is a good option to try and move defenders away from you. And Enos, I almost don't really have too big of a problem with Enos because, again, it's the start. It's his first couple of starts. Like you said, he needs to get better. My issue is more like, all right, BJ Williams is only a sophomore, but he's played for a full year. He probably needs to take a step forward. And even more than that, Lyndon Cooper at center. And then, like you mentioned, the left guard situation. I think it's just not happening there. There's a big issue there. And you can run around it a little bit. You can try and run handoffs outside and things like that, but it's not going to help you with the pass protection. And that's a big issue. I mean, like, yeah, there's no trade deadline, like you said, but that's got to be a focus in the portal this offseason. I mean, maybe the number one focus. And everybody needs offensive linemen out of the portal, so it's not going to be easy. It's not like you're trying to find a market inefficiency or something, but they've got to get better there. I'm not sure if the solutions are really in-house at this point.
I mean, the only solution that like comes to mind that would even make sense to me is, it stands to reason I would think Ryan Baer is going to be the left tackle next season, right? Do you put your best tackle at left tackle? I mean, right, I think he struggled the first couple of games, but he settled in. I think last year, I don't know if they overestimated him a little bit in just that they tried to give him too many positions at once. And like, he was a redshirt freshman. He needed to just be himself. And I think they're still kind of doing that approach, but at the same time, he's the best tackle on the roster that's healthy. Maybe he should be playing left tackle instead of right tackle. I don't know. Maybe that's the one adjustment they could make.
Yeah, but I can't see it happening mid-season, and I don't know. What else? Eli Holstein. What do you think about Eli after a rough couple of games here?
I think that's what I asked Pat on Saturday after the game. I'm like, it just seems like he's indecisive. Like, he's not. Whenever he should tuck it and run, he's like looking for a pass downfield that's just not there. Like those first couple of games, when it wasn't there, like he made a quick decision. Okay, boom, I'm taking off. And that just hasn't been there the past couple of games. And like I think that extends into the passing game. Like he sees a receiver, sees him. Then all of a sudden, when he does throw it, it's not there. So I don't know. I don't know why he's being. I mean, obviously, a lot of it is the team's dropping 7, dropping 8. It's the pressure he's getting up front. I mean, I think everything's kind of working against him. But I mean, I think the reason why Pitt's struggling is I think other teams saw that, okay, this kid's a freshman. We could probably get him to, make some mistakes. Like they watched those first couple games, like North Carolina, that interception, like he threw the ball exactly where they wanted him to. Like that was like, they baited him into that the entire time. They read it like a book. And a couple times that happened this season, and a few teams actually dropped interceptions. He probably should have a couple more. So
yeah,
I don't know, but it does seem like teams are recognizing his inexperience, recognizing that he is a freshman, and they're kind of taking advantage of it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I thought it was telling, I think you probably noticed this quote from Narduzzi on Monday about like, the things we've seen in the last 3 weeks is not at all what we've seen on tape. That Cal, Syracuse, and SMU have done different things than what they typically do. I'm like, okay, but you know what? You actually kind of have seen it on tape because they've all kind of done the same sort of things, right? Like Cal did something, Syracuse seemed to sort of model it, and SMU as well. All three of those teams were like 20% blitz rate against Pitt, which, maybe SMU wasn't a huge blitz team anyway because their defensive front's pretty good, but like I feel like they all sort of followed a similar model. And so I think in addition to the offensive line issues, in addition to maybe questionable decision-making about your wide receiver personnel and how you use them, and in addition to Eli Holstein being a redshirt freshman and playing like a redshirt freshman, I think there's a little bit of an issue with game planning right now too, where you need to look, and JJ Laster said it yesterday. He was like, we just really need to look at ourselves. Yeah, okay. But I would also recommend looking at the last 3 teams and what they did, because I would bet, and I used this phrase on the Morning Pit today, I would bet dollars to donuts, Jim, which I actually learned the origin of that phrase, but I would bet dollars to donuts that Virginia's going to do something similar. I don't see Virginia coming out and rushing 5 every time. They're going to drop into coverage. They're going to make Eli Holstein beat their coverage. And if he can, then they'll start bringing pressure. But if they don't need to, they won't, because it's what's worked for the last 3 games. Now, I've figured that out. Do we think Pat Narduzzi and Cade Bell will figure that out? Because, yeah, you have to self-scout, but you better be looking at what those other teams did. Like, I don't want to hear that you were surprised by what Virginia does if Virginia comes out and does the same damn thing that SMU and Cal and Syracuse did. You know what I mean? Like, I think that seems like a pretty obvious conclusion to reach.
Yeah, I mean, just like following this program through the years and knowing how they operate, it's they will scout a team and they will scout a coach like three stops prior to where he is at right now. They will, like, if the defensive coordinator at Virginia coached at Coastal Carolina 7 years ago, some intern is watching Coastal Carolina film. But you're right, they need to watch just the SMU film. Like, because Virginia's going to try to do what SMU did. You don't like need to go too in depth with this 4-4 team that's probably the worst defense or second worst defense in the ACC right now. Like, who cares what their tendencies are? Like, they're going to just try to mimic what's working against you. So start scouting against what has been working against you.
I always like to think that, there's this advantage for Pitt offensively, that they've got this really good defensive coordinator as the head coach, and they could hey, coach, what do you think this team's going to do against us? What would you do if you were them? But the problem with that is that for Narduzzi, he would just blitz everybody all the time and play man coverage and press man. And so I don't think that really helps. Narduzzi, I think he talked on Monday about we face our defense we don't play a 3 high safety, we don't play a cover 3, so we don't really get a good look at that. Well, you know what, Pat? I bet on 3rd and 18. A lot of defensive coordinators would not play press man and give up a 21-yard catch. Maybe they would drop into a zone and just give up 7 yards because it's 3rd and 18. You don't need to blitz. You can just drop into coverage and play coverage. But because Narduzzi doesn't really think like that, I don't know if they necessarily get the strategic advantage in terms of game planning for offense that they would if maybe their defensive coordinator wasn't so committed to doing things his way all the time. Like that was that one play. It was like 3rd and 18. And Tamarian Crumpley gave up like a 21-yard pass. I don't know if you remember the play. I think it was the first half. And
right at the goal line.
It got him. Yeah, exactly. It got him in the red zone, got him down near the end zone. And like, why are you playing press man on 3rd and 18? I think they had to play against Syracuse too. It was like 3rd and 20 something. And they're like pressing and playing man. It's like, guys, you could give up like 10 yards here and it's okay because now you still have them in 3rd and 8 or 4th and 8. Like they're going to kick a field goal. It's okay. You don't need to play your hyper aggressive defense when you have teams in that situation, but they seem to, I mean, that's Narduzzi, right? I mean, that's what he does. Screw it. We're going to send everybody, Hey, Pat, it's 3rd and 44. We could probably just drop. Nope. Rush 5, Although, have you seen there's a movement online about in an obvious Hail Mary situation that teams should rush 4 or 5 instead of only rushing 3 and trying to drop and play coverage and stuff like that. Like you should try to bring a little bit of heat and pressure the quarterback a little bit. So maybe Narduzzi's onto something. Maybe eventually the rest of college football and the NFL will catch up to him of blitzing in situations where it's okay to sit back and give up 8 or 10 yards because you've got him in a 3rd and long situation. What were we talking about before this? I don't even remember. Oh, scouting and self-scouting. So they need to do a better job of that. I want to get into the comments and questions here. We'll talk about Virginia. We'll talk about hoops, hopefully. Matt Presto says, I'm hoping that the message from Pat Narduzzi to the locker room is that this college football playoff ranking is a new lease on life and that it's quite literally weekly playoff football. I can't imagine running the table and not being in. I'm not really even thinking about that, Jim. I got to be honest. I was only marginally allowing myself to think about where Pitt might be in the college football playoff rankings or their chances of making an at-large bid before the SMU game. After the SMU game, I'm really not thinking. I want to see how high they can climb. If they can get out, right on the doorstep. I don't see them going 11-1. And I think unless they go 11-1, they're not even really going to be an at-large team. They could be top 15 at 10-2 if they can get to that point. But I got to say, that's not really on my radar.
No, I mean, I think like the number one task is like, all right, just beat Virginia and see, let the chips, fall wherever. But like, if they do beat Virginia, next week at this time, we can start talking and hyping up the big Clemson game and how that's huge. And, Pitt, there's enough teams right in front of them this week that are probably going to lose. So if Pitt takes care of business, they'll be a little bit closer in the rankings, a little bit closer to that top 12. And maybe we could start having those discussions. But yeah, I mean, the path right now is win out. And like, that's going to be their goal. I mean, that's, anytime under Pat Narduzzi, Pitt has lost a game, that, the next message is our goals are still in front of us. We can still do this, yada, yada, yada. I mean, that's what every college coach does. So, I mean, I think that's Pitt's message right now, too.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, Pitt's number 18 in the college football playoff poll. Iowa State is number 17. They suffered their first loss of the season this past weekend, too. They're going to be at Kansas, who is 2-6, but that's a sneaky, dangerous game. Number 16 is Ole Miss. They're hosting Georgia, who's number 3. And number 15 is LSU. They're hosting Alabama, who's number 11. So, I mean, there's a not improbable outcome where all 3 of those teams lose. And if Pitt wins, I don't know if they jump all the way to 14, but I mean, or 15 or whatever it might be. But I mean, there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity to get close to or into the top 15. Garrett Joe wants to know, were you guys surprised by the respect the ACC got in this college football playoff rankings? Louisville being ranked shocked me, as did Pitt in the top 20. I was surprised by 18 for Pitt. Were you surprised by that, Jim? Or was that what you expected?
A little surprised. I mean, I guess we just get like so locked into what the AP poll is that we just kind of think like the CFP is just going to mirror it. And obviously they value different things and they don't start in the preseason. That's the problem with the AP poll, is like it's based off the first poll and everything just moves off of that. So like it's kind of hard for a team like Pitt to, start out with 0 ranks and climb the ladder. But in this poll, you start with 8 games under your belt like everyone else. So if you just do an 8-game evaluation, then I could see where they come out a little bit higher on Pitt, SMU, Louisville, just the whole league.
Yeah. When I first saw it, I mean, I was surprised at number 18, and I was surprised that there were 5 ACC teams, but then I was like, well, I guess that makes sense. If they're going to keep, Clemson in, then they probably should put Louisville in, right? I mean, Louisville just won at Clemson. So it only sort of stands to reason. I think in a weird way, and maybe not that weird a way because this is convoluted college football ranking logic, but okay, best outcome on Saturday night would have been Pitt getting the win. But losing wasn't a total killer because then their first and only loss is to a quality team on the road. I almost feel like that loss, that game, helped SMU more than it hurt Pitt, and it built the reputation of SMU. Like, it's some kind of weird, like, mirror pretzel logic. Pitt losing to SMU made SMU look better, which made Pitt losing to SMU look better. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, SMU beating Pitt improved SMU, made them look really good, which in turn made Pitt losing to SMU look good. Like,
they finally have a quality loss on the resume.
They do have a quality loss because a team beat them. Like, that made that team look good and look even better than they were. I mean, they were top 20 before, but it may, I don't know. This is what happens in college football. Like, we decide, okay, Group A is good, and if Group B loses to them, then they must be good because they lost to Group A, and if they beat them, then they must be extra good because they're, Group A was the group that we decided is good, and now this group must be good, and that makes this group's losses. It's all, I mean, like, God forbid we just have standings like they have in the NFL. Although that'd be a lot less fun to talk about, I guess.
Yeah.
So, Donovan Reed says no running back can run behind Pitt's offensive line if there's no hole and the defense is penetrating in the backfield. I mean, it's tough. I think with the penetration that defenses have been getting up front, that's part of the reason I think you need to run wide a little bit more, give them passing looks, spread them out, try to get the linebackers out of the box if you can, and then try to run outside the tackle and hope your receivers can do some blocking out there. I think trying to run up the gut dives and powers and stuff, it's just probably not going to happen for you. You're going to have to get a little more creative, and the running back's going to have to make a guy miss, right? The running back's going to have to break a tackle or kind of make something happen on their own. But yeah, it's a tough situation right now with that offensive line. I think it probably has been all season. I think we had some concerns about that group heading into the year, but they've lived down to it, I guess. Adam Vinchik wants to know, do you think Eli has a short leash? What do you think, Jim?
If it's halftime and the offense is not doing much, I mean, I think you have to consider it. I mean, I think you're at that point now. You don't want to mess with the freshman's confidence, especially because he's going to be your quarterback next year, presumably. So, I mean, like, I get why you want to, have delicate hands, like, kind of dealing with him and his psyche, but you also still want to win football games. And, like, you're at a position where you're 7-1 ranked in the top 20, and you still need to win football games. So if things are struggling at halftime and it looks a lot like it did the past 3 weeks, I think you have to think about it. At the same time, we only see what happens on the field during the games. Like, we don't know what's going on at practice, and that was kind of our logic last year. It's like, well, maybe Christian Veilleux just throws 100 interceptions at practice, and I think that ended up actually being the case. So I don't know. I mean, I think they know what they have in Nate Yarnell. I think they could probably win a couple games with Nate Yarnell if they had to. So if they're looking for a spark, if the offense is running in circles again at halftime, then maybe you do it in the third quarter.
I would think it's like turnover based. You know what I mean? I would think it's like 3 interceptions in the first half. Maybe gets a change. There's a whole long conversation, I think, to have about why you would make the move, if you would make the move. And I think it comes down to, like, I mean, there's a lot of different angles to it. There's a lot of different elements to it of, Eli Holstein, obviously, I think you view him as your quarterback for the future if you're Pitt. And so you want to develop him. You want him to grow. Every snap is a learning lesson, and a teachable moment and all of that. But I think where it gets interesting is if you think there's even a 1% chance, if Nate Yarnell gives you a 1% better chance of winning right now, do you go with him because you have an opportunity to win 9-10 games, And then there's another question too of, I think all August we talked about, well, which quarterback has the most upside when we talked about this quarterback conversation, who's got the most upside? Well, if you look at it now and sort of view Nate Yarnell as having a higher floor, which I think you could make a case for. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think you could make a case for it just based on his career performance. If you feel like Nate Yarnell has a higher floor, but Eli Holstein still has the higher ceiling, you're kind of weighing that. And that may come into like, well, the higher floor might beat Virginia and Boston College, but you might need the higher ceiling to beat Louisville and Clemson. You know what I mean? And that's, I mean, I'm like oversimplifying, and I think there's a lot more to it than that, but Holstein's going to start this game. You know what I mean? Kind of like you said. It's that question once it gets into if the offense sputters. I think it's easy for them if he throws a bunch of interceptions. That makes the decision easy. What doesn't make the decision easy is if the offense only has like 130 yards at halftime. You know, a bunch of it comes from the running game, and the passing game is like, you know, 6 of 13. What was the one I just had? 6 of 13 for, you know, whatever, 60 yards or something like that. And then do you do it even though he's not turning the ball over and Pitt's got a, you know, 6-point lead or something?
It's always going to be tough to make the decision this year with Eli. Just because you started 7-0, he was so good those first 5 games. Like last year, the decision should have been easy, and I don't know why it wasn't. But like it was, there was no sign of success under Phil Dracovic. It made perfectly good sense. Like, all right, like we got to make a switch. It's never going to be as easy this year, even if his struggles continue for another game or two. Like it's not going to. That call's not going to be made as easily, and I get it.
Yeah, and I've been like pointing this out as well, that like he hasn't been complete trash the last 3 games, right? So like the Syracuse game in the second half before he got hurt, he was 6 of 6 for 72 yards and a touchdown. Had the 29-yard touchdown to Raphael Williams. He had a nice 21-yard pass to Gavin Bartholomew. Even at SMU, he had an 11-yard pass to Kenny Johnson on third and 5, a 24-yard pass to Kenny Johnson on a 3rd and 4 that he converted. He had a couple other nice like 3rd down passes. The Raphael Williams one that I mentioned, I forget if he had a couple against Cal. He had ran for a first down. He's made some nice throws. Like he hasn't completely gone in the tank. He's just not hitting on as many as he did in the first 5 games. And so, but to me also, I think there's something to be said for the fact that he did make those plays, and it shows that the potential is there. And so that sort of compels me, if I was making the decision to say, I'm going to stick with it because I think he can get back to that. I don't think he all of a sudden forgot how to make those plays. I think we're just running into new challenges if I'm Cade Bell. And then, you know, going back to what we said before, if I'm Cade Bell, I need to come up with a better scheme for when teams drop into coverage like this. And whether it's running more, whether it's different kinds of passes and different routes, I need to do a better job as well. Scott Mitchell says, I vaguely remember that either Cincinnati or West Virginia's coach saying that Eli Holstein's a first read, check down, scramble type of quarterback. Maybe he needs some serious development to distribute the ball better to his playmakers. Do you remember that quote? I don't remember hearing anything like that.
I don't.
All right. Well, I mean, I'll take Scott's word for it. So it's an interesting concept that Eli Holstein is either first read, check down, or scramble. What if that's the offense?
I think that is the offense.
What if it's just a one read offense, man? And it's like one read or read and then run. You know what I mean? Like, I think there was that really like messed up play where he got under pressure at SMU and tried to check down to Desmond Reed, who was 5 yards behind him. And it ended up being a lateral, and Reed had it. Like, I think but like at that point, SMU was like, dude, we know what you're doing. We're only going to rush 4. We have 7 to cover 5, and you bet your ass we're going to keep an eye on number 0. We might have 2 guys cover number 0 because he's right now one of the only guys who can actually beat us here. And so even though Desmond Reed is 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage or maybe further, there's a defender standing right next to him. Like, they covered that well. But that might just be the offense, Scott. Like, this is not, I mean, I know Pat Narduzzi made jokes 2 years ago about, you know, the one-word offense that Christian Bayer was playing at Penn State. Well, I think you're probably running some version of a one-word offense here at Pitt this year, don't you? I mean, that's what this is, isn't it?
I think this is exactly what it is. I mean, like that is the offense. he's not sitting back in the pocket, like reading the defense, because that's not what they're asking him to do.
Yeah. Let's see here. Mark Shilaju says, I think this is over multiple posts, so we'll try and get through all these. Says Pitt has become too enamored with their current transfer portal players. It seems like Mumfield, a former transfer, Johnson, Hammond are proven players from past seasons, but teams do not fear Reed in the running game. They're willing to risk a 70-yard run because they want to see him carry the load for 4 quarters. Whether you want to admit it or not, Hammond needs to be a... Well, he got mixed up and started on his next one. Teams are willing to risk a big run with Reed because he hasn't been a bell cow type back. Agree with me or not, Hammond needs to be a compliment, especially with inside runs. And I've been saying this for 3 weeks on this thread. I mean, Rodney Hammond looks fine, I guess. It's not like Desmond Reed is getting a bell cow. Like we said earlier, he's not getting a workhorse share of carries. So I don't really know if he can support that kind of load. I know early in the season when he was getting a ton of touches every game, he was getting banged up a little bit, but he's still out there. He's still running. Like I don't know if Rodney Hammond breaks tackles all that much. I think there's an image of him being sort of a bowling ball type of running back, but I'm not sure that he really breaks tackles. I think he's been able to, with good offensive lines, kind of find a small little crease and sneak through and nobody can see him because he's short, but Desmond Reed is short too. He can pull that off as well. I'm not saying Rodney Hammond doesn't have a role. Like I'm intrigued by Daniel Carter as a complimentary back. I think Rodney Hammond could do something as a complimentary back, but when you're only giving, what did Reed have at 13 carries at SMU? I just want to find the, they don't do individual players. I was trying to do like the quarter half comparison to see what he had in the first half before it really got out of hand. But I mean, 13 carries isn't enough. I don't think that's how much you need to get for Desmond Reed. Here, I have his game by game. He had 11 carries against Syracuse. He had 16 against Cal, so that's decent. And he ended up with 120 yards, including that 70-yarder. And no, I don't think teams are willing to take the risk of the 70-yard run because that is a lot. That puts a whole bunch of yards and probably some points on the board. So I don't think they're running it. Like, yeah, I'd like to see Hammond or Carter get some more carries, but I'd like to see Reed get some more carries. I don't think they're running it enough with him either.
No, I'd agree. And I think in that comment, the one part that kind of caught my eye is like teams do not fear Desmond Reed. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Like their whole game plan right now, like he is the guy. Like that, he's the top of the scouting report. If you're going to beat Pitt, you got to stop zero. So I do think teams fear Desmond Reed quite a bit. And I think teams are kind of stacking the box a little bit. And like we said, maybe run off tackle a little bit more. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, I don't really, I mean, that's like the only thing they fear right now. Adam Vinchik says maybe they need to run some wide receiver screens. Work defense is horizontal, then maybe the vertical game will open up as well. According to Pro Football Focus, Eli Holstein has thrown a screen pass on about 10% of his dropbacks. 28 attempts. He's 24 of 28 on screens. I can't say if these are wide receiver or running back screens, but I just don't feel like they get much out of them. I feel like they do them a little bit. What did I say? 28 attempts. So that's, a little less than 4 per game from Holstein. I just don't feel like they ever really get, I don't think they block them well. And they seem to run them either to like the wide side of the field because the ball takes 4 seconds to get to the target. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to, like, I would rather see them try more of like the inside screens, like where the offensive linemen release and get upfield and, dump it off and let the running back run behind. I'd like to see that. I feel like those passes to the outside just don't ever really, they might have a few that get 5 or 6 yards at times, but I don't feel like they're all that successful consistently. Do you?
No, and I think kind of the problem right now is that Pitt's doing too much stuff close to the line of scrimmage. Like we're talking like they need to like branch out because like if you run a wide receiver screen right now with 6 DBs, like it just gets blown up immediately. I think that's what they're running into a lot. It's like they need to go downfield, and I don't know. I think we arrived at the answer that they need to run the ball to get the plays downfield. So I don't know.
Yep. Football stinks, says Cade Bell is a young Pat Narduzzi for offense. Won't change his scheme. His arrogance is his biggest weakness. I don't know about arrogance. I think he's confident in his offense. I think you should be. I think you should believe in what you're trying to do. But I do think he needs to, like we said earlier, he needs to do a better job at scouting what these teams have been doing and finding ways to work around it. I don't know if he's a young Narduzzi for offense. I mean, like Narduzzi's defense, for whatever we want to say about it, and I know we were sort of criticizing it earlier, or I was at least. I mean, it's still been pretty good, over the years, whether it was at Michigan State or at Pitt. Not without its flaws, but pretty good overall through the years. So I don't know, although maybe that is an arrogant thing. I don't really know, but I can't speak to Cade Bell. Mark Shillaju says Pop-Tart or Holiday Bowl with a chance to win 10 games should be a very satisfying season for Pitt fans. It should be. But if they beat Virginia and they get to 8-1 and then they lose to Clemson and Louisville, people are going to be jumping off their bridge like they have been this week, and even if they finish up by beating Boston College and they go 9-3, which would be good, and maybe a chance to win a bowl game and get to 10-3. I mean, it'll be a disappointing finish after 7-0, but a pretty good season overall. It just might take some time to get that perspective,
Yeah, I think everyone kind of said like anyone that followed this team would have taken 7-1 at the start of the year. It's just like how it happened is like kind of the weird thing. So I don't know. The Pop-Tarts Bowl was in Dallas.
Oh yeah.
Steven and I talked to the rep. Steven has like a sweet new Pop-Tart Bowl pin.
No way. Nice.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, that's a nice pin. The guy just reached in his pocket, is like, here you go.
Is it in the shape of a Pop-Tart?
Yeah, there's like a little Pop-Tart on it. So
with like hands and legs, or just a Pop-Tart?
I can't remember. Like I didn't see the whole thing, but I think they have a Pop-Tart mascot for the game itself, so that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, for sure. Just don't put them in like a giant toaster. That could get bad. Let's see. All right. We should we got about 5 minutes left. We haven't even talked about the start of the basketball season. The game against Radford ended up being a 40-point win for Pitt on Monday night. For about 14 minutes, it was like, this is competitive. Close. I think it was still like a 4-point game, right? With it was 28-24, just under the 6 minute left to go in the game. And it was like, or left to go in the first half. And it was like, this is a curious outcome. I wasn't really expecting Pitt to have this much of a competitive game with Radford, and then they went on like a 17-3 run to end the first half and ended up blowing them out. Jim, you were at the Peterson Event Center. Your biggest impressions. What stood out to you in that win?
I mean, I think my biggest takeaway is just that the guards look as good as we think they are. I mean, I like Jalen Lowe and Ish Leggett get to the basket whenever they want, however they want. They dictate everything. So there's not going to be many teams that Pitt faces this year that are going to have guys that can stay in front of Jalen Lowe. I mean, he is that quick of a first step. He was tremendous, career high 21 points. We talked about, is he going to take that next step? Is he going to be the guy? Is he going to be that all-conference player? One game reaction. Yes, he is. I mean, he is that good, and he was in complete control of that game. You can't speed him up. I think the other takeaway I had is I think they made 8 threes and 7 different guys made one of them. So they have the shooters everywhere. They're still sitting on another shooter. That's, Amsel Dolic hasn't played yet. So I think they have another shooter ready to go. So, I mean, there's going to be some games this year where they're just going to shoot the lights out of the gym. And, they've done it the past couple of seasons. We've seen them have 15, 16, 17 threes. I mean, usually Blake Hinson has like 12 of them. I think it'll just be a little more balanced this year, but they're going to be able to really shoot it.
Yeah, I was trying to bring the stats up here. What were they? 8 of 23. So that's sort of in line with what we saw from the scrimmage against Cincinnati, right? I think they were like 11 of 23 from 3. So that volume, attempting 20 to 25 threes per game, seems like it's right in line with about what they did last year. 8. It's not a great percentage where they end up, just under 35%, But like you said, with 7 different guys making them, and that's with Leggett shooting 1 of 4. He'll probably do better than that. Of course, trying to see if there's any other obvious. Oh, Brandon Cummings going 1 of 3. I think you can probably get 1 or 2 out of him every night. Guillermo is going to make a couple. Lowe ended up having 2. It's such a spread of shooters as opposed to just 2 guys last year, like you said, of Blake and Bub. And so having that spread of shooters, I mean, it's just such a dangerous team. Ishmael Leggett was great in addition to Lowe. I mean, those 2 guys, I think there's a lot of value, and I don't think it can be overstated. And Jeff Capel even talked about this, the value in having 2 returning guards. I mean, last year they had 3 really good guards, but they were all brand new guys. Even the year before, I guess Nike was coming back off an injury, right? Burton was coming back, but Cummings was new. Greg Elliott was new. It wasn't like this where you've got Leggett and Lowe coming back and just looking like they picked up where they left off. I mean, those guys were absolutely sensational. I think Cam Corn is going to be really good. He finished multiple plays. I think we were saying this in the Panther-Lair group chat, as we were discussing his role or contributions. There were just multiple plays that he finished that don't get finished last year. They just don't, whether it's in a fast break or a putback or a pass down low, or he just happens to dribble in there and he's like, oh, look, I'm right near the basket. Well, he can finish those plays, and it wasn't happening. You might not get as many blocks out of the center position as you got a year ago, but you're going to get more points, and points are cool. I like that. Points are a good thing to have, and it's interesting, and I feel like they showed flashes of things that I think they can. Like, they're very far from their ceiling. You know what I mean? Like, not even considering Amsal Delilich being added back into this lineup. But I mean, I think as they figure out who they want to play and how they want to play and what, kind of rotation and personnel they want to focus on, I just think they're going to keep getting better. Do you know anything about Murray State? You know anything about this team on Friday night?
I did. I started to do a little bit of a dive to get ready for the previews. This is going to be a much tougher game. I think they're like in the 100 to 110 range of KenPom. So you're getting, probably like a bottom level ACC caliber team, but like a dangerous mid-major team. I think they were picked 3rd in their conference. They have 2 good guards. One was preseason all conference. The other was like a transfer that averaged like 17 points last year in a smaller league. Steve Prohm's the coach. He was there for 4 or 5 seasons. They were really good. Then he went to Iowa State. Didn't do so hot. So he's back at Murray State. So this is Steve Prohm 2.0. So I don't know. Murray State has always just been a good mid-major. Like I think going on like 10, 15 years now. So I think this will be a much more competitive game than what they faced on Monday.
That's good. I think they should challenge themselves a little bit, and this will be a good challenge. And they should still win. Have you seen a line? I know you like to track the against the spread.
No, I feel like college basketball, it's like the day before, the day of. So I have to wait on that. It's not like football where you get it a week in advance.
Yeah. How about what game? Oh, speaking of football lines, that Iowa State game. Iowa State's only like a 2.5 point favorite at Kansas. Kansas is 2-6. Iowa State's top 20. They have 1 loss.
I don't know. Something going on in Kansas.
Yeah, there must be. All right. Well, we'll see what happens against Murray State on Friday night. And then, of course, the Pitt, Virginia game on Saturday night will be live right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com after that game, hopefully by 1 a.m. I hope we're starting by 1 a.m. Dear God, I hope we're starting by 1 a.m. because I don't want to start much later than that. No matter what time we start, we're stopping at 2 a.m. I'll say that. I'm not going past 2 a.m. That's a good cutoff time. I think for all of us, although on a Saturday night, it'll be a little bit rowdier than it was on a Thursday night. But either way, we'll be live right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget to check out the website as well, Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com for everything to get you ready for Pitt, Virginia on Saturday night. And of course, Pitt, Murray State on Friday as well. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Jim, thank you for your time. And appreciate the comments and the questions. You guys have a good rest of the night. We will talk to you tomorrow for the morning pit and then Saturday night after the game for the post-game show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.